Welcome to today's Insight session. My name's Adam Kurtz, and I'll be stepping you through the session today. We'll be talking about creating and maintaining your views within Stratum. So, how to create a view? Well, basically, you can create a view on any one of your different view groups that you have here on the left frame, and you can right-click as long as you're a view administrator. All right, so let's make one thing clear. That you have to have certain level of permission or status in order to do what I'm going to show you now. Otherwise, at other customer sites, some customers have created just an empty view. So if you cannot create a view from scratch, you can certainly put an empty view out there, call it new view, and then users can start with that. Another thing a user could do is they could start with an existing view and they could delete what's in that view and add what they want into the view, as long as they're not a casual user. Casual users are pretty locked down, so they can't typically do those types of things. So as a view administrator, I could come in and I could right click on any one of my different view groups that I have available, such as sales and profitability. And as I right click on that view group, I get the option to create a new view. So that opens up the new view. I can then collapse my left frame here, and now I can start working on the view. A couple things to think about when you're creating a view. You want to have a purpose. So, some sort of business analytical purpose. What is it? Are you trying to create? Is it some sort of sales trend? Is it a sales comparison? Is it sales data? Is it production data? Is this something that you need to know your audience for in terms of who's going to use this view and what kind of information does it need to contain, and what kind of analytical story will it tell? So, for instance, we can create a this year versus last scenario where I can then add in different levels that I would think the users would want to see, and the necessary measures for them to do sales this year versus last analysis. So that's let's kind of start with that plan. And with that being said, then I can go ahead and start adding in the rows and columns, or the measures that I want to include into this particular scenario. So a couple of ways you can do that. You can certainly come up here and select your rows and columns, and using the navigational pane up here on the top. Also, the View Explorer over here on the right-hand side is available, where I could right-click and add things to my rows as well. So either way, you'll notice that the menu over here isn't quite as robust. It's a quick selection, and it shows all the different levels that are available. Whereas if I start over here and edit the row folder, I get something a little bit more robust. I can actually search for things such as product-related levels, and it gives you a bit more control about what you want to select. Here, then I can make multiple selections if I want to, and then add them down to the selected area. For customer-related levels, I can search on the keyword of customer, and then select the different customers that I want to include, the different customer levels that I want to include into my view. If I get rid of everything there, then it sends me back to the different levels that have not been selected yet, such as maybe a division level, so that I can see at a high level what's going on in the business. So those worked out well, and those are the different views that I want to include. If you have invoice level, that might be something you can include, so that users could then drill to invoice if they wanted to. If you're done making your selections, I can then click OK. It then populates the different levels that I have within my View Explorer. Now from here, I can reorder things. I can drag and drop, for instance, division up to the top so that it becomes my, my top level. If I then want to go to customer parent, then onto sold to, and then onto product family. So basically, I just kind of flipped it on its head, and now I'm going from division to parent to sold to family to product. So this is kind of what I like about the View Explorer. It gives me this ability to work, to add things to the view without actually committing any changes at this point. Also, I can right click on my measure items and then go ahead and grab, the different options that I have here by right clicking on measure items. So again, the View Explorer, very powerful tool in my opinion, almost like a pivot table wizard in Excel. It behaves very similarly. So let's go ahead and add the measures. First of all, if I wanted to add a calculation, well, I don't really have anything to calculate. So obviously I need to bring in some regular stored measures, such as sales dollars or units. Let's go ahead and select that. And in the similar vein, you can search for things in this menu as well. So if I want to search for sales, I can then search for different measures that have the word sales in them. And there's my sales amount. I can also do a control left click and select units as well. So I can bring in multiple measures on the fly if I wanted to, and then bring those in the same process. Here down below we need to select how I want to analyze the data in terms of time, and users will, they'll be able to change this. So it's not set in stone. This is something that you want to give them, initially, and then they can always come in and change the time units on ad hoc or on the fly for their analytical needs. So I'm going to select months, and for the good, I'll just give them the months. They can always change out the days if they want to hone in on a specific range of days or even a specific day for that matter. So down below is my range. So this is a time range view. So by default, we know that the view is giving us a time range metaphor in terms of how it displays the time, basically time, essentially. Now, here I could certainly use absolute time frames, like a year-to-date scenario. My demo is a little old, so 2017 happens to be my current year. So, I could always, push something like this out to the users, and then they can change the time frames as they see fit. Or I could change this to current year, and it will always display 2017 as my current year. Of course, I know, it's not 2017 any longer. I get it. But this will keep the view dynamic, right? So as I move into the next year, this view will actually move into the next year with me. So I don't have to maintain the time periods, nor do the users that use the view. The actual. So if I were to build a global view and want to push it out to the users and to the masses, then I would probably, it would be a good option here to actually build something that's more dynamic, right? So when they run the view, it's to date and it's more relevant. So if I select my current year to current year, well, that's going to be obviously January through September. September, again, is my current month. I know we're in October, but we'll think of September as the current month. So I can select current month, or I can certainly select previous month. Some companies do that as well, where they just year to date to them is well, it's basically the January to the most previous closed month, right? So with that, I'm going to add that in. And so now I've got those added into my view. And the reason I do this is what we can do very quickly here is add in last year's. And that gives us a set of, basically 4 columns of data for the measures. Cool. I've added those in. I'm now going to exit this menu. And I guess a good time as any to go ahead and apply those changes. And there they are. So now I've got data within my view. Looks good. It's starting me out at a divisional level, which is what I wanted it to do. And so now I've also got my sales amount, my sales units for this year. I've got last year's, basically the same measures as well. So here, if I wanted to, I certainly can drag and drop the measures around so that maybe I want to compare dollars to dollars and units to units. And that's actually looking quite nice. So, and now I can do my drill downs. So now I can drill that down to the different levels that I've added to my view. If I want to select on a given account, I can do that. I can then drill out, enjoy the drill downs all the way down to my product levels to see how the data looks. And this is coming along nicely. So, coming back to division. Some other things that I would probably want to see here would be, and let the users have, is some sort of variance or a variance percent to kind of give them an easy way to show growth, or decline for that matter. So I'm going to introduce a calculated column now that we have measures within my view to calculate with. And I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to calculate a variance. I'm just going to basically calculate this year and last year's sales, this year and last year's sales units. And I'm going to right click where I want it to add the column to the right of the column that I select. And I'm going to select add calculated measure item. And this is going to bring up this pop-up menu in which then, these are drag and droppable, by the way. So if you wanted to move that around a little bit, you can kind of then see a little bit of the background. And then you can work with the data. If you forgot what you had or what it looks like, you can always do that. Now I'm going to create my calculation, and here's the area in which I can create that expression for my calculation. And I'm going to expand out my measure item folder, which will then expose the different measures that are available within the view. And then here I can make my selections for my variance. So for my dollar variance, I'm going to select or click on this year's actual sales. And I'm going to type in then a dash or minus, and then I'm going to select last year's sales column or sales measure. Okay. And that I can come down here, click on validate, and certainly the product will validate the expression and tell you if you've got any problems. In this case, it seems to be valid. Furthermore, I can then come up here and select my format. This will be in dollars, so I'll select a dollar format. If I want to choose a fill color for this particular column, I can select maybe something pastelish so that we can still see the data, but then this will kind of make it stand out a little bit in terms of a calculated column. My caption, or what will the header say for this calculation? Probably a good thing would be maybe var dollar or variance dollars. And that's it. So, at this point, I've filled out the things that I wanted to. I've created my calculation, and now I'm ready to go ahead and click OK and introduce that calculation into my view. So that's the variance in terms of dollars. Another thing I like to introduce here is the variance percent. So right clicking once more, adding in yet another calculation, it then allows me to build in the variance percent. So again, the same concept here, although this time I can use my variance column or my new variance measure calculation and use that within my calculations for the variance percent, which would be the variance over last year's sales. Now, given the fact that we're doing some division on this, it might behoove you to go down to the Stratum.Viewer functions, in which we've got some different functions that you can use. In this scenario, to avoid any divide by zero errors, we can use the divisional divide with zero check. And what this does, once I select that, it's going to ask me for two expressions, basically the numerator and the denominator of this division function. So, well, like I said, we want the variance and we want last year's sales amount as that calculation. So basically, it's going to divide the sales and last year's sales amount into that variance, given the fact that the variance is my first selected measure for this divide with zero check function. I can certainly go ahead and validate that. The product says it's valid. Now, let's go ahead and format it. So up here, we're going to give it a format of a percent. And you can include different decimals if you wanted to or not. I'll just select a nice round formatted percentage. And then again, the fill color, if you wanted to make it the same to kind of mesh in with the other column, probably not a bad idea. And then my column header is going to say, instead of our dollar, we're going to give it variance percent. Okay, so click OK to that. We now have our variance percent. As we do our drill downs, we can see that certainly, the different growth factors are a little more apparent by using the variance percent. As a matter of fact, you could hide the variance if you wanted to. I can right click and hide it in case I just want them to see the variance percent. Probably would make the view a little cleaner since the variance is, it's good to see, but they can always unhide it if they want to see it. Other things I can do is to do some traffic lighting on the actual calculated column to make some of these numbers pop. For instance, you might have some negative variances that are below certain thresholds of acceptable growth. You might have certain standards or goals. And you can build those into the pop-up expression for the variance column. So I've got my variance percent highlighted here. If I right click and go to properties, it'll take you to the properties menu, and I can resize that if I wanted to. And here I can select a lot of different things, obviously, as you can see, different things that I can delve into. I can certainly change the fill color, the format string, of course. I can get back into the expression if I wanted to and change that. So the properties menu, again, is a lot of different things that you can get to here. One of those things is being the conditional format feature, which then I can then go ahead and turn that on, and it will then allow me to select. There might be some formats out there that you've already created, right? And you can select any of the formats that you may already have if they're relevant. Now, if they're not, you can always create a custom by selecting the custom button here. I can then create a custom one from scratch and save it to this particular view. We can call it sales growth, traffic light, whatever you want to call it. You can describe it further if you wanted to, and then start building your conditions here, such as what icon do you want the column to look like, if it meets that condition. Do you want it to look like something like that, or something along those lines? You could use indicators, flags, signs, and symbols, traffic lighting, right? So we'll go ahead and select the traffic light option here. And we'll say that, this is what we want it to look like. And when sales is over a certain amount for the variance. So here we'll say if it's over a 0.25, we'll make it maybe 0.27, and it'll make those particular sales growth factors pop as a green, right? I can add another argument here if I wanted to by clicking on the add button. It then allows me to build out this traffic light and allows me to maybe build another threshold of indicators. So then for instance, like a caution area or a medium area where that might be greater than 0.223 or 23%, right? Anything remaining, this is actually pretty easy. It's going to be red, right? So we can very quickly just go ahead and select that as well. So a couple of things. I can go ahead and apply that now. I can also do a save as and save this as a traffic light so it can be selectable again. Let's click OK, see what we get. And so it worked well, right? It's doing what I thought it would do. And we can now see areas of growth rather easily and quickly. We can see that we got an area there that doesn't meet some cautionary areas. And then we've got Quebec Foods down there, that's below the advisable growth threshold. So as a sales manager or sales director, I can then drill in on that. I can see that the sold to level, I can see the product families, I can see, the product mix. So when I get to the product mix level as you can see, there is some growth. We do see some actually really good growth for certain product family items. So this is, as you can see, the mix of items that we're selling into this particular account. And certainly, as you can see, um, the traffic light really makes this pop nicely. And as you get to even further levels, such as product, it'll make it that much easier to identify, areas of growth and decline, et cetera. And we do have some areas of decline there as well. So devil's in the details, right? It may look like growth at an aggregate level, but there's always work to do down at the detail level. Promotional activity to stimulate demand for some of these items. Um, try to figure out what's going on in terms of why some of these items are down and not meeting the goals. So specifically, the negative growth ones might be the first items you might want to zone in on. So that's my view. And again, I can go through the same exercise for my units. Have that available so I can see the variance percent for my units, and certainly, keep that consistent, right, with the view. Finally, you certainly don't want to lose the work. So by clicking on the Save As button up here in my file menu, you can go ahead and click on that. It'll give you an option to save this as a different view name, describe it, give it a different view type. It might be a shared view versus global. It's up to you in terms of how you want to push this out. But global views are typically reserved for this is your production view, right? This is something that, is part of your library, and it's something that you really want to push out as a structured. This is a predefined view. It's production. So shared is something probably more developmental. You might be building views, and you want to share it with another view administrator, and it'd be a good way, and that way they can see it too, and they can come in and enjoy the benefits of the view and collaborate with you on the view. Personal, that's something that any user can do in terms of saving the view as a personal view. It then becomes their own view that only they can see. Of course, the administrators can see it, but and this allows them to kind of save iterations of their own personal views. So again, if they take a view, bastardize it to what they want, then save as a personal view, then they've got their own particular view that they could use. With that being said, if you suffer from too many views, how can you manage these views? Well, in going into your view profile menu, and that's in the admin utilities view group. And if you're not running a current version, that's where you want to go you want to go to your view profile menu. It's actually called view. Here I can come to manage things and go to view. And when I do that, it comes in and it gives me a menu of all my views that I have within the Stratum environment. A good option here would be if you were to manage older views, you could always sort on the last used by column, or the last used, I should say. So when was the last? These are my older ones. And if I sort that in descending fashion, we can see that some of these views haven't been run in over like 5 or 6 years. Right. So this is a great way, a great menu to go in. You may want to run some of these to see, obviously if, what they contain or whatever. But again, you're going to, um, then they'll show up as being used. So just be careful with that. But what one thing to do here is to identify old, these views haven't been run in a long time, and it might be a good idea to just archive them, and just move them to an archived view group, and you can then hide that view group from the users so that they may think the view's gone, but it's really not. It's just moved to an archived folder, if you will. So if I were to highlight some of the views that I want to perform that process with, I can do that. I can then highlight the ones that I want to move into that. Of course, I can control left click the ones that some of the other random ones that I want to move into that archive folder. And as you select the ones that are highlighted, I can then click on the move the selected views to a different view group button. And this will allow me to move these views to my archive folder, view group, or any other one for that matter. If I want to move it around, I can move it to multiple view groups as well. So it's a great way to actually move views to other folders if you don't want them to reside in that folder any longer. So a good example here, obviously, is to move them from their folders in which they currently reside, and then move them to a protected folder that no one can really see except for administrators. In this case, I've called it archive. And then you can go ahead and click OK, and it'll then move those views to that folder, and effectively cleaning up your production folders for your users, essentially, and moving these views that again that haven't been run for quite some time. So again, creating views, you don't want to forget to, when you create them, to obviously manage them as well, so you don't have thousands and thousands of views. Down here on the bottom, you'll see a view count. I've got 604 views. I'm not sure if you can see that, but if you go to the bottom of the view menu, you will see a count, and that will tell you how many views that you have. So hopefully it's not over 5,000. Nevertheless, as you can see, you can also delete, if you don't feel like you want to archive them or even back them up, certainly you can delete them. And but cautionary there, they're gone. Now, again, you might be backing up your environments, your databases. There might be ways to get them back by restoring that, but just be careful there, because those will be deleted permanently unless you restore the databases back and get them back that way. There's no way to get them back otherwise. So that's why moving them, to an archive folder might be a better approach. In IT, we always say, ugh, deleting something bad. But we all know that, obviously sometimes or another, or some way or another, you're going to have to delete some things. So, but as you can see within the view menu, you can manage your menus or your views. You can sort and figure out, not only when they're being last used, but who used them. When was it created? There's a lot of really good data points here that you can use to manage your views.